Hey, John.
Yes, Andy.
You know, we spend a lot of time on the podcast talking about the landscapes of Iceland.
We sure do.
But you know what's better than talking about the landscapes?
Getting to bed on time?
No.
I knew that wasn't going to be it. A spirit-forward Manhattan on the rocks.
I mean, that's a lovely... But no, what's better than talking about the landscapes, you see,
I know. Being there.
That's right, being there. Nothing beats visiting Iceland and standing where the events of the sagas took place.
Absolutely. And Snæfellsnes Peninsula is the perfect example for that. It's a place where lava fields, green valleys, and a glacier-capped volcano evoke the stories of the sagas.
Every farm, every mound, every fjord, every trail across the heath, if I can paint a picture for you, connects us to the medieval imagination this podcast celebrates.
And the people of Iceland today still live and work in those same places. It's one of the few places I've traveled where the past and present feel like they're truly side by side.
I agree. I just wish that our listeners could experience it for themselves.
Well, they can. Next April, Saga Thing invites you to walk those paths with us. Together, we'll explore Snæfellsnes, home to Eyrbyggja Saga, with its haunted hills and heroic feuds.
We'll also spend some time in the landscapes of Bárðar Saga Snæfellsnes, the story of the half-troll guardian spirit of the land.
And since we'll be in the area, we'll be sure to visit the lands of Egil's Saga, tracing the beginnings and endings of Egil's life in Iceland.
Learn more and reserve your spot at sagathingtours.com.
That's sagathingtours.com, because the best way to study a saga is to stand where it happened.
Hello, and welcome to Saga Briefs, where we look into the stories behind the sagas. Over the past few years, many of you have written to us about your fascination with runes. And while John and I both teach runes in our History of the English Language courses, and we share your enthusiasm for the subject, we're hardly what you'd call experts in the field. But last November, we attended a conference at the University of Denver, where we had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Ragnhild Ljosland from the University of Highlands and Islands Centre for Nordic Studies in Orkney. In addition to being a linguist with an expertise in Scandinavian languages, Dr. Ljosland is also a runologist. Now, we knew she was our kind of person as soon as she started referencing specific saga scenes in casual conversation, because, how often do you meet someone like that? And then, while attending her workshop on runology, John and I quickly realized that Dr. Ljosland would be a perfect candidate for a Saga Brief interview on the subject. Fortunately, she made some time to sit down with us in a small study room at the library to chat about the history of runes. I want to say thank you to Dr. Ljosland for sharing with us your passion and knowledge in this interview. We'd also like to thank the University of Denver for hosting us and making this interview possible. And a special thanks to Dr. Donna Beth Ellard for organizing the conference and helping us locate a quiet spot for recording. We hope you all enjoy the conversation as much as we did.
Well, so first of all, thank you so much for speaking to us. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is you do.
Yes, I live in the Orkney Islands off the coast of Scotland. I haven't always been there. I've been there for 7 years in the Centre for Nordic Studies, which is part of the University of the Highlands and Islands. And we do various master's degrees there, and our most popular one is in Viking Studies.
Oh,
so I have,
great!
Yes, I have the great pleasure of teaching Viking runology and Old Norse to the Viking Studies students. And they can be from all over the world because they can connect. We do it on video conferencing, so you can sit anywhere you like and connect into our course.
So we can go back to school right now and start attending your classes.
Absolutely.
It's probably long overdue.
Yeah, right? Wow, that's really, really wonderful. And so that also means that all of our listeners who are kind of enthusiastic about Viking literature, runes, and all the things that you do, if they wanted to, they could apply to get into the program?
Yes, they could, from anywhere in the world.
Excellent.
You've got to think a bit about time zones.
Yes, right, sure.
If you're on the opposite side of the earth, you might have to watch recording, but otherwise you can connect in live and discuss and contribute just like anybody else.
Wonderful.
So, but you're an expert on runes.
I come from a background in Scandinavian Scandinavian language and literature. That's what I studied. I come from Trondheim in Norway, and there I got a grounding in Old Norse as part of the undergraduate course in Scandinavian language and literature. And then over the years, I've had lots of different interests in dialect, in sociolinguistics, in language history, in runes. So the more I learn about runes, the cooler I think they are.
Well, so can we just start by having you give us a little bit of a primer on the history of runes for people who might not be familiar with them?
Yeah, the runes started in the 1st century AD, or we don't actually know when they started, but the oldest inscription we have is a Meldor fibula from northern Germany, which is about the middle of the 1st century. And back in those days, there was a runic alphabet that we call the older Futhark. It's called Futhark because those letters are the first letters of the alphabet. It goes F, U, Th, Ark, and so on.
So like the ABC.
Right? Yeah. And that Futhark is shared between the Germanic tribes that were on the go back then.
Okay.
And this was before the Viking Age and before the Old Norse language as we know it. The language in Scandinavia sounded very different than Proto-Norse. So those are the earliest. And then there were some big changes in the language. Well, mainly it's in the 600s and 700s those changes are happening. And from 800 onwards, we have the younger Futhark, which I also call the Viking Age Futhark, the one that Vikings used who spoke Old Norse. And also the Anglo-Saxons had their own Futhark that they developed from the older Futhark, which is more similar to the older Futhark, but with extra letters to represent the sounds that they had gained in this process of language change. So in the end, you end up with the Vikings and Anglo-Saxons using Futharks that look very different. So if the inscription turns up, for example, in northern England, and you're not sure, is this a Viking who wrote this or was it an Anglo-Saxon? You can look at their letters and you can tell from which Futhark, which shape it is.
So you can tell pretty easily on a first look whether something is a Viking Age younger Futhark, an Anglo-Saxon Futhark, one of the older. It's relatively easy for you to spot the differences right away.
Yeah, if you've got the right letters. Some are very stable. For example, F and R are the same all the way. But then there are others that you can diagnostically tell. For example, the H looks like a capital Roman H, but with a slanted crossbar in the older. And it has 2 slanted crossbars in the Anglo-Saxon, and the Viking H doesn't look like that at all. So if you have one of these diagnostic runes, you can tell just by taking one look at it.
Yeah. You were telling us in the workshop the other day that the younger Futhark uses single staves. They have a strong preference for single staves, whereas the elder Futhark kind of mixed things up. Sometimes they didn't have staves, or sometimes they had multiple staves, 2 staves for the H, as you said.
Yeah.
Why do you think that in the younger Futhark they switched to a single stave? Is it for clarity, or what do you think drove that shift?
Wow, that's a question that nobody can answer. I think.
I know. So what's your best guess?
Yeah, to me it looks a bit deliberate, like there's a thought behind it, but I don't know what that thought actually was. If you look at it as a computer would, you can say that they seem to prefer a single stave, a single vertical, with one or more branches coming off it. And that's their preferred shape. But why they prefer that shape, I don't know. And it's also been said that they prefer lines that don't go along the grain of the wood if you're carving in wood, because they would disappear into the grain. So going diagonally or across the grain of the wood is easier for them.
I had some of my students do a rune carving exercise. So they all got wood out and they had to carve some kind of message. I let them choose which version of the Futhark they wanted to use. But they ran into that same problem that they were actually contacting me via email saying, look, when I'm trying to do a certain line, it's going with the grain of the wood and we can't see it. So what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
That does seem like...
Choose better wood.
Yeah, choose better wood. Shift the grains. So it does seem like maybe a practical kind of thing.
But now the younger Futhark also has the difference that it has fewer letters than the elder, right?
The older one has 24 letters and the younger has only 16. Right. And that seems directly stupid to me because...
It causes a lot of problems.
In that period that we call the syncope period, when the language changed from Proto-Norse to Old Norse, we ended up getting new vowels. Mm-hmm. That was I mutation product vowels such as and I and A. Mm-hmm. So there's no way of writing those new vowels in runes, and on top of that, they've cut some of the vowels that we did have, like O, so that we could have had use for, but they went and cut it. So in the Viking Age younger Futhark, you end up using the same rune for different sounds, like K has to stand in for G as well, and T has to stand for D as well.
So the sound pairs, the voiced and voiceless sound pairs, will share a rune.
And there's vowels that share a rune as well, like I and E. And the U rune can be used for all sorts of rounded vowels.
And I imagine that leads to a lot of guesswork when you find runic inscriptions, that you're going to run into some words that it's really hard to figure out what exactly those sound pairs are referring to. And maybe it even changes the meaning of the inscription based on what that particular rune means, right?
Absolutely. And I think the most illustrating example is the skull fragment from Ribe in Denmark. It's a fragment of a human skull. It's had a hole bored through it, so you could wear it potentially as an amulet. And it has an inscription where the word dverg is used. Okay. Dwarf.
Yeah, dwarf.
Yeah. And then how would you spell that using the younger Futhark?
Because they've taken most of the letters you need away.
So starting with D.
You end up using the T. T.
And then V, there's no V rune either.
Yeah. So you're going to have to use something like... you're either going to have to use like an O or U, right?
And what they did use was U often. I think they've actually taken that over from the Roman tradition where you see U and in the same Roman letter as well. So T-U and then E would be...
it's a front vowel, so I.
Yes. And then we have R, so at last we reached a sound that we have a rune for. Right. And then the last one is the G.
Right. You said that's shared with the K sound.
Yeah, so we end up with, for dverg, we end up with twerk. And that's what I've written on the skull fragment.
So someone's walking around with a skull fragment with the word twerk on it.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's it seems to be a charm against headache or something. It's some kind of ailment that they call dwarf stroke.
Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do they know anything about the skull fragment itself? And have they looked at kind of where that dates to or what kind of person that was?
It's
such an interesting piece of jewelry.
8th century.
Okay.
And possibly an archaeologist could tell you more about the context.
That's very interesting.
So you said that one was found. You've already been referencing runes found all over the place. Where are runes typically found?
In the areas where Germanic-speaking people either settled or lived or travelled to.
So anywhere they went, runes went with them.
Well, the sort of epicenter for the early runes seems to be in southern Scandinavia, so Denmark, southern Sweden typically, and then also in Netherlands and Germany, and then they come over to Britain with the Anglo-Saxons, and Scandinavia develops its own younger Futhark at times. Time goes along, and then the Viking expansion starts at the same time as the younger Futhark. So they take them over again to Britain. So that's why Britain has got 2 types of runes going on. And to the islands of the North Atlantic, Faroe Islands, Iceland, Orkney, Shetland, Greenland. And these places are quite rich in runic finds, but then you get stray finds in places where they didn't settle but traveled to, such as Constantinople.
Yeah. We love talking about the Vikings in Constantinople.
Yeah.
It's one of our favorite subjects. Yeah.
I have to ask, since you're from Trondheim, are there any in Trondheim?
Yes.
There are?
Yes, plenty.
Good.
And I know that you have heard about runes in the North America. Well, what is your opinion of those finds?
At the moment,
you needn't be diplomatic.
Yeah, you don't have to be. We've already gone over some of this on the podcast.
I haven't seen any that I think are genuine yet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's impossible because we do have the Lanzo Meadows site. So if anything turns up in Lanzo Meadows in an excavation, then I might be more willing to believe it if it's got an archaeological context.
Exactly.
But the likes of the Kensington runestone and the Heavener runestone, I think are modern. And the Kensington one has a very fascinating history actually, because there was a very late runic tradition in district called Dalarna in Sweden. And these are valleys up in the middle of nowhere. So they have a very conservative, very fascinating dialect even today. And there was an unbroken runic tradition just there. After everybody else had stopped using runes, there were folk in Dalarna still teaching the younger generations to use runes alongside the Roman alphabet.
Wow.
And then one of these guys came over to America, to Kensington, and made the Kensington runestone in 1899.
So they were training their kids that late. In the 19th century, we're still learning this.
I think the person who made the Kensington runestone never trained his kids because his daughter became quite desperate with people contacting her about the runestone later in her life. But I think he had learned runes back in Sweden where he came from, and he made the Kensington runestone as a practical joke. But it would have been fun if he had admitted it being a practical joke after some time. Right. But whether he was too embarrassed or enjoyed it too much, how everybody was fooled and so on, then it, for some reason it didn't come with that. I never said it was a joke. He died still pretending that he'd found it rather than made it. But I think it's really fascinating how that stone has attracted such a great following, and it means such a lot to people to connect to and help them develop their own identity and so on.
Yeah. What sorts of uses do you find runes put to? I know obviously for monuments, but what other kind of things do they use runes for?
It's different for different time periods. So the earliest runes are often found on jewelry and on weapons. And in Denmark, they had a habit of depositing weapons in bogs, and that preserves them so beautifully. So it's not just on the metal part of the weapon, but also on the shaft that we find runes. And then there was a period of monumental commemorative stones, and Sweden is the place to go to for those. So in the Viking Age and the conversion period, and for a while after the conversion too, in the 11th century, they put up these beautiful decorated, with the fabulous snakes and dragon shapes that interlace with one another and bite each other's tail, and the inscriptions written inside the body of the animal. And they're so stunning to look at. But there's thousands of them in Sweden. And from the medieval period, after the conversion, we have a very rich urban material. From, for example, Bergen in Norway is a very rich site, just from one little plot where there was a warehouse in the old Hanseatic port. There was a fire there in 1955. This is the Bryggen, that's a World Heritage Site, so it's got a line of these warehouses where they've obviously repaired and rebuilt and so on, but the bottom layers go back to the medieval period. So it's been the same family or company or warehouse that's been sitting on the same plot since the medieval period. And when that burnt, not all of it, just a part of it in 1955, in that excavation that followed, turned up over 600 runic inscriptions. So if they had excavated the whole of medieval Bergen, they would probably get thousands.
There must be that must be, first of all, a terribly difficult job to catalog all that material.
Yeah. It's taken decades,
right?
and also the material is very diverse and very everyday, and it's so different from these monumental runes that are very kind of serious.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Thorfinn raised this stone in memory of Thorgeir, his son, who fell in the east. That kind of text. Whereas the Bergen material is, I love you, love me, Gunhild, kiss me. Or my absolute favorite from Bergen is, Gyda says, go home now.
No way. Really?
Well, we know there's references in the sagas as well to these rune sticks that are carved for immediate and prosaic purposes. Right? Think of Gisli visiting his brother, and when Thorkel won't come out to visit him, Gisli carves a rune stick and throws it through the window. So his brother will come out to talk to him. And we're not told what he carves, but whatever he carves is sort of a very basic message to his brother that he flings in the window.
Yeah. So today you would send somebody a text on your phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead, it's a stick with a little message carved in it,
Yeah,
or
that's
some other
exactly.
thing that you've got.
Wow, that's great.
That's really interesting because I've often thought of runes and rune carving as a kind of a specialized thing that not everyone could either do or read. How literate, when you look at these kinds of rune inscriptions, how literate do you think that the average person was in terms of runic inscription?
I think by the time you get to the 12th and 13th century, and 14th as well, which is the bulk of this urban material, I think it was very widespread. And from Trondheim, there's a little toy sword. It's made out of wood. It's as if it's made for like a 6-year-old, for example, a little short one. And on it says, Ivar owns the sword. So
That's great.
Yeah, so it kind of tells you that the person who wrote it, maybe it was his mother, expected people to be able to read that.
Right. And return it to him when he leaves it somewhere.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's interesting too because they're still using runes, even though they've obviously been Christianized and they have a Roman alphabet that they can use, but they're still carving in runes.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the material, because the Roman alphabet seems to be preferred for those situations where you can actually sit down with vellum and pen and ink.
Yeah, you got a lot of curves in the letters.
And the runes seems to be for those situations where you pick up the nearest thing and you always had a knife and there was always some wood or bone or whatever lying around that you could scratch some runes on. So it's easier at hand and doesn't cost as much
Yes,
as
right.
writing in pen.
Speaking of that, you were talking to us, this is during the conference where we're attending, you were talking to us about the number of rune rows that are actually appear to be sort of practices of the runic alphabet, right? That people would have been training themselves on this or maybe using as a reference. Can you tell us about how common those are?
Very common. Actually, I haven't counted it up, but just from an impression, the inscription of the rune row itself, or part of it, usually the start of it, Futhark, is the most common thing you can find anywhere. So, but those could have several purposes, of course. So, something to look at while you're writing, or a practice could be one purpose. But then you find it on unexpected objects, like things that seem to be high status. There's a sword, for example. This is an Anglo-Saxon artifact. It comes from the River Thames. It's called the Battersea Seax. And it has the whole Anglo-Saxon runic alphabet written on it. And it's a very beautifully made sword with different colour metal inlay. Must have cost a fortune. So why have the whole Futhark on it?
Right.
And also from Orkney, a Scandinavian Futhark high status object is a very beautiful bear's tooth. It's been pierced so you can wear it as a pendant or amulet. And with the start of the Futhark, it's just Futhark on it, carved out very beautifully in double lines. So those do not seem to be practice pieces.
Right, yeah, because they don't have the whole alphabet.
No, and also why put so much work and money into it?
Yeah.
But the practice piece would be more like a random stick that the alphabet is written on.
Yeah. Does that suggest that the act of writing runes has some? I don't know if it's. A lot of people are going to assume that there's a magical quality to them.
Talismanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. That must have meant something to them to have writing on it.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. Speaking of trying to figure out problems, we noticed in the images that you showed us as part of your presentation here at the conference that there was one of the braktiats, and on it was the inscription Alu, right? We were actually asked about the prevalence of Alu in runic writings for our podcast. And so first of all, maybe you could explain what a braktiat is.
Yes, it's a gold medallion.
Okay.
They imitate Roman medallions, but they develop their own Germanic way of doing it. They come from the older Futhark periods of pre-Viking age, usually from between 450 to 600 AD. And they're made of gold and fantastic. So you've got often a human head and then animals or birds on it, but they're very stylized and you often see them in profile, so you have to train your eye a bit to see what they are.
Oh, interesting.
And some of them have runes and some of them don't.
Okay. And so the from what we have found, the Alu rune kind of shows up every once in a while. What is the significance of Alu as far as you know?
It means ale or beer.
Right. So you're walking around with a medallion on your chest that says beer.
Yeah. I'm not an expert on pre-Christian religion, so I can only take it so far. But what I've read anyway is that beer was included in the ritual practices. So you would pass around bowls of beer and ritually drink. And you would also give the gods offerings of beer, both locally at home during the more private bloots at home, and more publicly and in the big bloot. So it's probably got to do with that. But listeners who are interested in hearing more should read Mindy MacLeod and Bernard Mee's Runic Amulets and Magic Objects.
Okay, perfect.
We can put that up on the site.
Yeah, we'll give a link to the so you can go buy it or find it for yourselves.
Yeah, it's a bit controversial because they have a whole new theory on what Alu means there.
Really?
They prefer to read it as dedication and not literally as beer.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, we were all set to get our own.
But there's another thing about the braktiat that you showed us, which is that the A-L-U was reversed. Right? That it was written right to left rather than left to right. And we have a listener, Ingrid Ringler, who wanted to know about the writing of runes back to front, or left to right, or right to left. And how common is it to see them written in different directions?
Yeah, I think for the particular braktiat, it might have been that they made the stamp first, and then if you stamp the design onto that little gold disc, it'll be mirror image after you've stamped it. So if you want it to appear the right way, you have to make the stamp mirror image, and that can be tricky. But that said, the early runic inscriptions don't worry much about writing direction at all, because they didn't go to school. It's only when we go to school that we're trained to write left to right. Before that, young children write in any direction they please. And it's a bit like that with runes too, that they can be bottom to top or right to left or back and forth. Bustrophodon is when they turn back at the end of each line, so they snake down, like ploughing.
That must be so frustrating when you find a new rune sometimes and you have to figure out, you're expecting to read it one way. So you have to really retrain your brain to be open to the direction you're going to read it in.
Yeah.
That's so funny. We've been talking about kind of runes as artifacts, but tell us a little bit about the actual process of rune carving. What is that like? And have you tried it?
Not seriously. I did an evening class a couple of years ago that was called Practical Runology, but my college stipulated in their health and safety prescriptions that we were not allowed to use sharp implements.
Well, it's going to make it a lot harder.
That's not very practical.
No. So it was aimed at artists. So we ended up carving runes in cheese and and baking runic cakes and felted runes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really made me think about what other types of material that could have had runes on it, because what we're left with is what survived.
Sure.
But who knows what else they might have written runes on that didn't survive.
Lots of cheeses just lying around.
Right, remember the cheese press? There's a special cheese press in Jarl Saga, and when a cheese is stolen, they can reconstitute the cheese because of the shape of that one press and know that it was stolen from this house.
That's how Hallgerd is discovered, isn't
Right,
it?
exactly. And so you wonder, are there runes into the cheese top that would allow you to sort of put it back together and know this is, more have made this cheese.
That would be awesome if they found, because they could find the cheese press.
Right,
sure.
Yeah. And then also for practice, they could have written runes in the snow, in the sand, in coal. Why start with a knife?
Right.
Yeah.
So outside of knives, obviously we know that they carved runes with knives. What other materials are they carving on, and what tools do you know that they're using to do this? Especially for those larger monuments.
There's probably an archaeological expert who could answer this much better than me. But from what I've seen, those that are not carved are sometimes punched with lots of little dots.
Interesting.
Sort of Pontilus style, just hundreds of little dots.
Yeah, like the Meldorf fibula I mentioned before, the earliest runic inscription of all. It's punched, lots of little dots. There's a very fascinating inscription from Orkney that tells us what implement was used to carve it, or rather what the carver would like us to believe. It says these runes were carved by the man most skilled in runes in the Western Ocean with the axe that Gauk Trandilson owned in the south of the country.
Really?
Interesting.
So somebody's really bragging.
No kidding.
Right. That's great. And are they well carved?
They're beautiful. Yes, they're fantastic. And it also partly uses cipher runes to disguise, I think it's dessa runa, these runes is in cipher.
We haven't talked about ciphers in this interview yet, but I know you mentioned them in your workshop, and we just loved that part. Can you describe the ciphers? I know it was a visual thing, so listeners are going to have to bear with us. But can you describe the ciphers for us, and we'll just put some pictures up to represent them? Yeah.
There are different ciphers, but the one that's used in this particular inscription and also elsewhere in Orkney is based on counting the number of runes and dividing them into groups and then numbering the rune within the group. So first you make 3 equal groups. So you get 6, 5, and 5. So in the older food it would work better because there you get 8, 8, and 8. But but here you have arke, and then and then
That's the hard one.
Yeah, and then you number the groups, and just to make it more interesting, then number the last group number 1, the middle group is number 2, and the first group, Futhark, is number 3.
So the reverse direction of what we'd expect.
Well, it wouldn't be a cipher if it were just straightforward.
Yeah, but within the group you read left to right.
So they're switching it up.
Yeah.
It's really clever.
So if you want to write F, for example, F is the first rune in the third group, and then you can draw this out in any way you like. For example, like a little tree, the stem or stave, and then one branch on one side to say the first rune, and then 3 branches on the other side to say the third group. Then you can disguise it more if you're more inventive. For example, there's one from Bergen that has lots of little faces. Little guys with beard. A bit like your beard.
Yeah, right. So what letter?
My two-sided beard, yes.
Yeah. If you plot your beard and have 3 plots on one side and 1 on the other, that would spell F.
It's like F.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that now.
What rune are you feeling like today? You
Right,
can come in
right.
with the different. That's fascinating.
I'm going to write Alu.
Right. So the next question is about runic decline, because you mentioned that there are, of course, kind of post-Reformation runes, and they kind of keep writing them. But runic writing does decline in the Germanic world at some point. Can you describe that decline? Why does it happen? And is it because specifically of the arrival of the Latin alphabet, or what else is happening?
I think ultimately, yes, it is. But it's not like the church stamped them out or anything.
Right.
They were quite happy with runes coexisting with the Roman alphabet. And people also often wrote Christian texts in runes.
Yeah.
So sometimes in Latin, even Pater Noster or Ave Maria in runes. So it's not like runes are pagan script or anything. That's not why. I think it's just a very slow decline as the more continental-oriented culture penetrates Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And runes are still used in the 1200s, 1300s, 1400s, and so start to dwindle. And then by the time you get to 1500s and the printing press becomes common.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Who's carving runes after that?
Yeah, then runes are out, but they have already been dwindling before printing becomes common. I think runes aren't nobody's trying to destroy runes, they just go out of fashion. That's why, and that's why they last longer in more remote eras.
Yeah.
You said that runes kind of went out of fashion. They seem to be in fashion again.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, can you speak about why you think runes are kind of popularized, and when, if you had to pinpoint, when did that start happening?
Ooh, it started happening in the 1500s.
Really?
Yeah.
So they didn't really go away for that long.
And no, as soon as they dwindled enough that a few people still knew them, but most people didn't really use them, there was an antiquarian interest that started, and the pioneer was Ole Worm.
Oh, the famous Ole Worm.
Yes.
Worm.
We've talked about him before.
Yeah.
But we always hesitate to how to pronounce his name.
Yeah, it's Worm. But he wrote this fantastic book where he was trying to make drawings and descriptions of all the runic inscriptions of Denmark. And similarly in Sweden there were scholarly works like that. So those were the early pioneers of the kind of new interest in runes. But then it starts booming in the 19th century along with the new interest in all things Viking.
Right. Came
on with the national romantic period. And the new availability of translated sagas. So we got all these Victorians who, and also on the continent and in Scandinavia who have now rediscovered some roots and are turning away from the Greek and Roman classics and finding that actually the Germanic literature is something that we can connect to in search of our identity. Then from that, there was an occult movement that somehow found the runes and took them and started using them for their own purposes. And that was in Germany. They use runes not as a script, but as a way of divination or magic. So, and reading runes to them means to read some kind of deeper philosophical / magic meaning into each symbol, not into the text. That was the folkish movement in Austria and Germany in the late 1800s. And then the Nazis come and discover this and integrate it into their ideology. So we see runes appearing on the Nazi uniforms, like the SS, two runes, SS. There were other runes too, like the older Futhark O rune was very popular with them because the name for that one is Odal, which means inheritable property, and they put a whole lot of new meaning into that, meaning it's inheritance, heritage, cultural heritage, race, the Germanic race, and so on. So it becomes a symbol of racial purity for them and appears on their uniforms. And then later, after the war, we see runes partly retaining that in the right-wing circles, but also more benignly, I think, in circles which are not right-wing, but interested in occultism and mysticism without being racist or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And nowadays, certainly those elements are still there, but you see a lot of runes in tattoos. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and they're completely harmless.
Yeah.
I'm often asked to write runes for tattoos for people, and they want the names of their children or the place they come from, or it's.
Do you charge them at all, or are you just so generous?
No, I just give it to them.
Now that this is going out, people are going to be...
I might have to start charging.
Be careful. Nominal fee. So a last question. Do you have a favorite runic carving? Because you've looked at so many, and things like, she says, go home now, are just fantastic.
That's one of my favorites. There's a very rude one from Oslo. That's also one of my favorites. I might not say that on the podcast.
Oh, I see.
Maybe tell us after.
All right, you can tell us that one off the air.
No, my favorite is one that comes from a place called Breknes in Orkney. And the text is nothing special because it says Fiber. So there's no meaning in the text. It's damaged. We only have a little sequence, and there's been more text before and after. The reason it's my favorite is that I was there when it was found.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very romantic evening in 2001.
Really? Wow, nice.
My boyfriend, he's my husband now, but my boyfriend then, Christopher G, and I were having a romantic walk along the beach in Orkney, and we came up to this old building. It's a 16th century stately mansion house, which is falling down now, is in ruins. And there's outbuildings, and there's what we call dikes, like stone walls. Yep. And one of these were crumbling, and some stones had fallen onto the grass. And Christopher saw the sun, the last rays of the setting sun shining diagonally onto one of these stones.
Really?
And spotted the runes.
It's like out of a movie. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, so he picked it up and showed it to me and said, Ragnhild, do you think these are runes? But I was only 21 years old at that point, and I hadn't studied runes yet, so all I could say was, I don't know. But we took it into the museum, and Michael Barnes from London came up not so long after, and he said they were genuine, so they're now included in the corpus of British runic inscription.
How nice.
Wow.
Did you have a picture of yourself and your husband with this stone before? Or this was before cell phones and selfies and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, we didn't even have a camera with us.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because if it had been now, I would have photographed the fine spot before we moved it. But in 2001, we didn't have a digital camera.
That must be funny for some of our younger listeners to hear. Yeah. How life was different back then.
Yeah.
Would you be able to go into the where they're holding this particular stone and have them pull it out so you guys can get your picture with it finally?
Ooh, I hadn't thought of that. It's in the Orkney Museum in a glass case.
And I mean, you brought it in, right? You should have special.
I think you have some kind of spotter's rights or something.
Well, that's really wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
And we'll try to make sure that not too many of our listeners contact you about tattoos.
I charge per letter.
That's a good idea.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
sér alvaran. Hann rauður logi